Yeah, it's here. It has arrived, finally. Let's get into it. Welcome to Above Africa, Stories from the Wild. I'm Photogrpahers, wildlife photographer, professional field guide, and this is where my world of safaris meets storytelling. Hello everybody, Francois here. I am a professional field guide and wildlife photographer based in South Africa. And for the past couple of weeks, I was fortunate enough to be one of the first photographers to take out Canon's new R6 Mark III. Check it out. Now in this video, I'm not here to read off the specs. We can do that, but that's not the purpose of this video. The reason I was given this camera was to go into the field and actually test it out, see what it's all about, see practically what it's like as a wildlife photographer. And there's a couple of key features that I thought really stood out for me that could make this a real game changer in the market for wildlife photographers. Whether you are intermediate or even a professional, this camera has got some things that is really super cool. So one of the first things about this camera that has really changed a lot from its predecessor, the Mark II, is the sensor size. The Mark III has got a 32.5 megapixel sensor. Now why this is important is its predecessor comes from a 24 megapixel sensor, which is relatively small, but this full frame 32 megapixel sensor gives you that little bit of ability to crop. Now, we all know as wildlife photographers, we always try to get it right in camera, but let's be honest, there's a lot of times that we do crop our images to get the composition right, to get a little bit tighter, to show a little bit of details. And now with this Mark III, having the ability to crop a little bit more with that larger sensor size is truly a game changer in the Canon lineup. Let's talk a little bit about speed, because you all know that we all want to capture the moment, either freeze a moment, whether it's water droplets coming from a lion shaking its head in the rain, or a cheetah running at full tilt, or something moving fast like birds in flight. Speed is important. And there's a couple of things on this camera that is really, really, really cool. The one big change that was made in the R6 Mark III that I'm so happy about is the memory card slots. So in the predecessors, the Mark I and the Mark II, you had 2 slots, but both of them were for SD cards. Now, like the R5 and the R5 II, you've got one CF Express slot and one SD slot, which is awesome, which means you can split your photos and your videos to different cards, which is amazing. If you want to be shooting video and you want a little bit more speed, you go take that to the CF Express card, and you can take your photos all the way onto the SD card, or just put all in one card, doesn't matter. The point is that it's got 2 card slots and there's a CF Express card in there, which is awesome. Now, on top of that, what is important when it comes to speed is the fact that electronic shutter wise, it's got 40 frames per second, which is unreal and amazing for a full frame camera. And what I love about it is that in that moments like birds in flight or cheetahs running, 40 frames a second, I mean, you are spraying a lot and you you are filling up a memory card pretty quickly. But now you've got the CF Express card, which is awesome, slightly faster. But you've got the ability to capture that motion and capture that moment that is that allows you to get a nice clear photo. What is also cool about the R6 Mark II, which is one of my favorite features that I've only started really using in the last year or so with the R5 Mark II, is pre-capture. Now, the way pre-capture works is when you switch enable pre-capture, you half press your shutter button and it will take a series of photos. If you don't full press the shutter button, it will just keep on taking, almost in a loop, keep on taking photos. Now in the menu, in the red menu, you can actually go and change how many photos you can take in pre-capture. You can take 1 to 15 photos in pre-capture in a loop. That is kind of what Canon with the R5 Mark II as well as the now the R6 Mark III has got the ability to do. So your half pressure shutter button, it will take 15 photos. If you haven't pressed the shutter button down completely to actually take the photos, it will keep on just going and keep on taking, keep looping those pre-capture photos until you physically press the button. Why this is important is that moment. Going back to birds as an example, when a bird is sitting about to take off, often we miss that initial flight of the feathers, that one or two wing flaps that we miss. And with pre-capture, it allows you to capture those moments just before. Bear in mind though that it does take up quite a bit of battery, and it does fill your memory card. So just be aware of it. If you've got a smaller memory card and you use pre-capture, be very cautious of it. What's nice about the batteries that are used within the R6 Mark III is that it gives you a little bit of longevity. Obviously, the batteries had to be made in this way because it's got these new features that it needs to be able to run on the camera, the same as the R5 Mark II. And these batteries has given me a lot of longevity in the field. Thinking about the R5 Mark II that I've had in the field, I run a battery almost for a full game drive without changing it, and then I'm filming and I'm shooting photos, and they do really, really well. And the R6 Mark III, when I had that in the field, I only had one battery with, but it was amazing. I never ever ran out of battery, and I used pre-capture. I've used some very cool filming features that's on it that I'll get to now, but it really does make a difference. A key feature for a wildlife photographer, obviously, is autofocus. Now, we know that the autofocus doesn't matter from which brand you're talking about. There are some flaws here and there. I personally believe that the Canon autofocus system is right up there with the best. And with the R6 Mark III, they've really stepped it up from the predecessor, the Mark II, with the autofocus system, and it's really, really, really well. I had moments where I had to focus slightly between grasses, and we had wild dogs behind branches, and it held focus pretty well. There will always be a time where it will come in and out of focus. It's very difficult for the autofocus systems to really hold that focus perfectly, like through grasses. I haven't had one system that really does that perfectly. But the R6 Mark III has got a very similar autofocus system than the R5 Mark II, which I'm very familiar with because I've had it for the last year. And it really, really does well. And it's really fast, it's really responsive, and obviously the way you set your autofocus system up will depend on how it works. But I was really impressed with the R6 Mark III's autofocus system. Well, also an added feature for the portrait photographers is that it's got people priority register. So you can set it that it registers people as priority, which the predecessor cameras did not have, which is a pretty cool feature to have. We've chatted a little bit about the photography side. Now I'll go a little bit in detail about me as a wildlife photographer and why I enjoyed this camera. But I want to move a little bit away from it and talk about the hybrid shooter. And why I think this is going to be a great camera in the lineup is it's going to give the hybrid shooter that goes between video and photo. I do it a lot myself. Just the ability to get into the market with a really good pro level camera with great features, and it comes in at a good price point, which I'm not 100% sure yet, but when this video drops, the price will be out. So what's cool about the video features on the R6 Mark III, one of the biggest things that I'm so glad that it's got now is the ability to shoot high frame rate, 100 FPS, 120 at 4K. Thank you, Canon, because it was such a big frustration in the predecessors where you can only do high frame rates in full HD. It's very difficult to put a video together when you're filming at 50 frames or 25 frames, you're doing that in like 4K, and then you have to go back to full HD for the cinematic slow-mo stuff. So very, very, very happy with that. And it does a really good job. Super, super cool. It also has great subject tracking, image stabilization for video. So when you are tracking, it really holds it pretty stable, even if you're panning, which is a very cool feature that they've got in the camera. Another cool thing for the video shooters is the ability to now shoot in C-Log 2, and it really changes your game as a videographer to shoot in that kind of flat profile to bring out all the colors and the details and things like that. So I think a really step up for the video shooters and the hybrid shooters in this specific space. So I think that is an awesome feature to look at if you're a hybrid shooter. If you're a content creator, I think this R6 Mark III is going to be like, it's going to fly off the counters, I think, because it's got that R5 capabilities coming in slightly lower, which is really, really amazing. Now, there's something that they've put into this camera that a lot of people have been asking about. A lot of people say it's not necessary. A lot of people say it is. I think it is pretty darn cool. And that is OpenGate. Basically, what OpenGate means in a nutshell is that you are filming on the whole spectrum of the sensor. So normally, if you just would have filmed normally, usually film like 16:9. As a simple example, so your video that you're filming is slightly cropped, if I can put it like that. But if you're filming on the full sensor, it actually looks very strange when you go and review the footage, because it's almost like a square window that you get when you look at the footage. But you're filming across the whole sensor. Now, why this is pretty cool is if you are somebody that is into social media, you're a content creator, now you've got a slightly more width to play with or length to play with in your frame from top to bottom to crop, which means you don't lose as much detail in your footage or quality in your footage because the frame is slightly higher. So OpenGate, that's a very simplistic explanation to it, but OpenGate, I think, is a pretty cool feature to have. Not a lot of cameras in this kind of space that does have OpenGate as a feature. Like I said, a lot of people weren't really interested in it, but I think it's a really, really, really awesome feature. And again, it lends itself towards that hybrid shooter of photo and video, the content creators, videographers. I really think the videographers are going to love this camera with all the new features that it's got on, and the same for the photographers. Another cool thing is just the customizability of the buttons on your camera. There's slightly more options for you than in the predecessors. One function that I used quite significantly out in the field, and as a wildlife photographer, I think it's so cool to have if you've got a camera that does have pre-capture. This function is not even available on like the R5 II yet, but what is super cool is you can customize a button to enable and disable your pre-capture. Now, I had it on the little manual function button, which is just above the shutter button, that small little button that you have on the camera. So if I press that, it will enable pre-capture, and then I know, cool, pre-capture done, ready and go. On my R5 II, I have to go into the menu, enable pre-capture, and then I get to go. And you're wasting like 10 seconds, and that 10 seconds something could have happened. So the ability to customize your button, pre-capture on, ready to go, awesome, love it. I love how Canon has kind of listened to the people and taken notes and made these small little changes. And I can't wait for that feature to come out on the R5 II. I'm hoping it's going to come out on the R5 II. I'm pretty sure it will, but crossing fingers because I've got an R5 II and not an R6 III. So let's hope it comes out. So what is my thoughts on the R6 Mark III as a wildlife photographer? So I ran through a couple of the specs that I think as a wildlife photographer is important to have. But let me tell you about my in-field experience. So I had the camera for a couple of days. I was in my Dikwe Game Reserve, and then I went to Root Flag Game Reserve as well, just outside Pretoria, just to get a little bit of diversity and variety. Now, I used the 400 prime f2.8, and in some cases I also used the 7200 f4. And what was very interesting for me to see is when I was in Madrid, where we had pretty average weather, it was very overcast and rainy, so I was shooting in pretty low light conditions, regardless of having the 400 2.8 on the camera. Full frame cameras generally struggles a little bit in low light. It, might get a bit noisy. And there were a couple of moments where I took photos late afternoon as the sun was almost down, and it was overcast. And even though there was a little bit of noise, there was still a lot of detail in the shots. And I was actually pleasantly surprised about the quality of the photographs that I managed to get with the 7200 and with the 400. So I was very happy with the results that I managed to get. What I also found was that in scenarios where animals were moving pretty quickly, autofocus was pretty sharp. Like I said, it's very similar for me, like the R5 Mark II. And I almost felt at home a little bit with the R6 III because I'm so accustomed to the R5 Mark II. And the autofocus really did super well. It held on to the subject, and I didn't really have too many issues with the subject moving past branches or through grass. The only times where it maybe lost a little bit of focus is when it was going through kind of thick stuff, and that's understandable because you can only the autofocus can only do so much, and that's like that on any camera. So I think that was really impressive. I did play around with the pre-capture quite a lot and the electronic shutter at 40 frames per second. I did a lot of bird photography. We had some dab chicks diving into the water. So I got some really cool shots, which you usually miss, and you get that motion of the dab chick going under the water and then coming back up again. So I was really impressed with the pre-capture. And again, that little customizable button that you had on the front of the camera to enable and disable your pre-capture, for me, was a game changer. I also did some photos of a couple of the staff members at the lodge, just to kind of get that people priority setting and seeing how it picks up on people, especially for portraits. And again, did so well. And again, for me, having the R5 II, it was such a nice transition to the R6 Mark III because there's a lot of similarities in the usability of the camera as well as the quality of the footage that we're getting and the photos that we're getting. So it was really cool to jump between people and wildlife. And again, the images that I got was really nice. I'm looking at JPEGs, obviously, because when we used it, the raw files are not viewable yet. So from looking at the JPEG files that we've got, really happy with the results. And even with the video footage that we took, high frame rate video footage, really crisp, really clear, very stable. Very impressed with how the autofocus is like holding onto the subject, even with zebras running around and fighting, managed to hold onto the subject and hold focus, which is exactly what we are looking for when we do it. So for who is this camera? It's a good question because it's not just for one person, and then that's the beauty of the R6 Mark III, because it's most likely going to come in at a price below the R5 II, and it will most likely, just looking at all the features that it's got, it will most likely be slightly more than what the R6 II was, but it would be worth it because you get a lot of features of the R5 II packed into the R6 III, and that is something for me that is really amazing. And for the hybrid shoot, to the content creator, the videographer, I really think this R6 III is going to make some waves in the industry because it's ticking a lot of the boxes that those specific people are looking for. The videographers, the content creators, the wildlife photographers, they are really going to find a lot of value in this camera, and I was seriously impressed. So take it from me, I am contemplating whether or not I should let go of my R5 and maybe get an R6 III, but I'm not yet sure. Would love to take it out for another spin when the opportunity comes along, but I really think that this camera is going to make some waves in the industry, and it's super cool. By the way, this is my own opinion. It's not a sponsored video or anything like that. I use cameras across the board, but I've been shooting with Canon for the last 10 years. and obviously a big supporter of Canon because I've been using them for so long. And that is the R6 Mark III, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, share this video with friends. I hope it was insightful for you. I really thought the camera was great. And if you've got any comments, drop the comments in the bottom section there. And if you've got any questions, let me know. I will try my best to answer it as best as I can. But until next time, I will see you guys out in the field. Bye-bye.